Well, good morning everybody, and welcome to this garden industry question time, and of course welcome to Glee. There's a huge amount for everybody to see and do here. Just really wanted to sort of talk to you a little bit today about social media, communities, creating communities. It's been a pretty tough year for garden centres and for retailers as a whole, but I think there are still many avenues that we can further explore to benefit our businesses, and there are some quite good examples of that throughout the industry and of course in the high street as a whole, to help people to sort of realise their full potential in such a tough economic climate. The trend towards community has been increasing. People want to feel that the money that they're spending benefits their local community, and I think people want to engage a lot more with outlets that are working with the community and developing more of a community spirit. And you'll find that most of the large high street retailers do have, in sort of all stores, they have sort of community engagement people that are working very closely with, whether it's schools, hospitals, anybody really that they can sort of get to work together and talk to people within the community. And there's a number of garden centres, I think, a huge amount of garden centres that have seen the opportunities presented by working with the community. Some of the leading lights of that are actually here today, and we'll talk to you about some of the things that they've been doing. And of course, in these times where sort of social networking is such an important part of everyday life, your community doesn't just have to be your local community. It can be a community of like-minded sort of individuals or people that just want to get together and form a group where they can share ideas and ideals. And it's, people now very much trust the information that they get from peers. Most people, if they're going on holiday or booking a hotel, will just check it on TripAdvisor and see what other people think. And they're finding that a much more beneficial way of dealing with things than actually going to the hotels themselves. They want to know what other people think. They want to know what other people's opinions are. And they trust those opinions that they get. And I think it's important that we sort of take that into account, and that's becoming more and more important than even sort of traditional marketing. I think we also have to look at the fact that, that the government were working towards having sort of the big society, and we're sort of looking to that as a campaign to create community hubs where people would come together. That as a campaign hasn't particularly worked, but a lot of the ideals that were set up in there have done so. We all know that our customers visit very frequently, but we also need to increase this and engage a new audience. And I think children very much, they're our gardeners of tomorrow. And for anybody that has children will realise just how important pester power is. If the children want to go somewhere, it does make a huge amount of difference. And I think with school curriculums focusing more on the benefits of green, the environment, wildlife gardening, I think this gives garden centres a huge opportunity, and we're ideally placed to provide assistance to local schools and indeed many other groups. And it's an ideal way to improve our standing with customers. Many are doing so. Not everybody quite shouts about it, everything that they are doing. But today your panellists are here to talk about what they're doing, both with the local and their sort of virtual communities. So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome, we've got Alan from Cleve Nurseries, it's a medium-sized garden centre and nursery business. They're doing a huge amount working with communities and have a new venture, which is the edible bus stop, which Alan will talk about. We've got both Alan and Sarah from Fermoy's garden centres, who have done a huge amount with local communities, and we'll talk about that. Peter Doyle, jumping on one at the end, does a lot of training on e-commerce and can help people to develop e-commerce, social media, and how to engage with people. And then I've got David from Dobby's Garden Centres, who works in their marketing department, working both on the e-commerce side and also doing, again, the Facebook, Twitter, and a lot of the social media. So I'll hand over to our panellists now. And I think we'll start with looking at some of the things that people have done for the community. So I think, Alan, if we start with you and some of the things that Fermoy's have done, huge involvement with the garden centres, particularly with children. Do you think that that's an important starting place?
Very important. We recognised some 5 years ago that it was important to engage with children. You know, we've got customers and those customers are ageing. We need to make sure that the younger generation get into gardening, get into healthy eating, into healthy living. Unfortunately, it's skipped a generation. The parents aren't giving this education to their children, and currently the schools aren't able to give that education, which needs to change. And we need, as garden centres, to be lobbying government to ensure that this is done. But we did recognise that there was this gap, and we felt it was important as a garden centre that we got involved with those children, particularly 5 to 11-year-olds, because they're very enthusiastic and they're very, they absorb a lot of information. And as Carol says, they go home and the pester power is tremendous. They can work with their parents, encourage their parents to come into the garden centre, and encourage their grandparents as well. We, myself and Sarah, we work together on the schools. We go out to the schools, working with them, and Sarah's got a great number of projects that she works on with the schools, which she'll explain later. But what we need to do is to get those children really engaged with us and engaged in gardening and the future of gardening. We see them as our potential customer. So if I just hand over now to Sarah, who'll explain a little bit about what we do in our garden centre. I'm the one who just sits there throwing out hundreds of ideas every few minutes, and Sarah says, well, that's a load of rubbish, and this is a load of rubbish. But eventually we find an idea that works, and Sarah will give you some of the information on to the ideas we've come up with and those things that do really work. So just hand you over to Sarah Dumont.
Well, this year we've done about 4 different schemes. The most popular and the one that's been most successful in our garden centre is at the Devon County Show, which is our local big show for the area with 90,000 visitors. And we had a schools gardening competition. We gave 40 local schools a wheelbarrow, 2 bags of compost that we had donated, and some seeds. And we asked them all to grow a garden in a wheelbarrow. So we got all the schools to either bring their wheelbarrows into us or take them direct to the county show, which is a bit of a logistical nightmare, but Alan got around it, didn't you, Alan? So we get all these schools from various different things that we've done over the last few years. We started off by going out to the schools and doing things like simple things like growing carrots in recycled pots and things. So we've built up a really good database of local schools that we know are interested in gardening. Sometimes it's hard to find the right person in the school to send information to. If you just send it to the office, it gets lost in a pile of paper. So we like to try and find the right person, and then we send everything to the individual rather than direct to the school. So I could have had 80 schools enter my competition, but I was governed by the space that I was given in the show. So we took all the wheelbarrows to the Devon County Show, had a fantastic display there. We won the best stand of the whole show when the judges went round, because it was glorious, the different wheelbarrows that we had. We had lots of themed ones, some on the Olympics, some on the Jubilee, hundreds of different ideas from different kids. All the children came to set up their wheelbarrows. We had really good press from it. We were on the local news on both channels. We had lots of coverage. And we encouraged visitors to the show to vote for their favourite wheelbarrow. So we got 6,000 votes over the 3 days that we had the show on. We were the most popular stand in the garden tent by far. And the 6 winning wheelbarrows we took to Chelsea. So we had a contact with Peter Seabrook and the Sun, and he managed to get us into Chelsea. So we're only on the Chelsea Fringe in the garden owned by the pensioners. And we thought about doing something else whilst we were doing that, and Alan had the idea that he would you would walk with a wheelbarrow to start with. He was going to walk a wheelbarrow from us in Newton Abbot to Chelsea, and I told him that was silly because it would take too long. It would be quite good because you'd be out of the office for a long time. But he likes cycling, so in the end we came up with the idea of a tandem. And so we borrowed a tandem and we towed a wheelbarrow from Fermoys via the county show up to Chelsea, visiting garden centres on the way. So it's 450 miles, and the route took in 25 different garden centres. We did it with Scott's Miracle Grow. They were our main support. They had a support vehicle for us, and at the different garden centres we went to, they set up a mini road show. And we asked lots of different people to come on the bike. So Carol joined us, didn't you, Carol?
I did.
Advertising for people to come on the back of the bike with Alan. So Alan was on the front, and I think both Carol and Alan were control freaks, so you didn't particularly like it to start with, because you couldn't do anything and you just had to pedal.
No, not good for a control freak being on the back of a tandem, I can tell you.
But it was really good, and we got lots of press from it. We were on the television again, and we did it for 2 charities. We did it for the Green Fingers and Garden Relief charities, and we asked people on the way. We got sponsorship, and we got money from the garden centres, and we raised about £11,500 on the trip, so that was really good. And then Alan finished it off at Chelsea with our wheelbarrows, and he had a page 3 Sun Girl meet him there that had a top on, but and Alan was in the paper, quite a big spread in the sun, and it was really good. So that was the main thing that we did. So all the schools that were involved came up to Chelsea. We gave them all tickets to come in. Some brought the whole school, some brought a class, some just brought a few children. But they all recognise us wherever we go. They call us Mr. and Mrs. Farmoys. They tell their parents to come and see us. So we think that it works because of all the publicity that we get and all of the pester power that the children give to their parents, and then they come in to try gardening for themselves. The other main thing that we do is a scarecrow competition in April, which is a bit too early to grow anything. We haven't thought of anything that we can grow in April, so we've done a big scarecrow competition at a local food festival, and so we promote Grow Your Own. We had, which gardeners did we have this year? We had Pippa, Greenwood and Matt Briggs. They were sponsored by our suppliers, and they came down and did a day of gardening, and we had a barbecue with food to grow your own, and we had 30 schools enter our scarecrow competition there. This weekend I organise a big food festival at Farmoys where we get 7,000 or 8,000 people come for the weekend of a beer and food festival. That starts this Friday, so I shouldn't really be here because I should be doing that. But on the Friday before it starts, I invite 400 children to the marquee, which is empty on the Friday during the day, and we have a healthy eating, healthy growing day. So we get our suppliers and the people that are coming to the show to make up stands, and somebody shows them how to make sausages, how to plant pumpkins, how to grow compost, various different things like that. And that's another great community event that lots of schools have got involved with. I could have easily had 1,000 children. I've had to turn so many away. And we get good publicity and press from that as well. And then a lot of the people will come back during the show over the next couple of days, and we raise about 30,000 for charity on that this weekend, and we donate that between the local community and give the scouts money and the school money, and they all put in what they want, and we give them money back from that. So that's the main things that we do with children, and we think that the benefits that we get from them outweigh the advertising that we would do in the normal press, the weekly papers. We stopped doing a lot of those now, but we haven't really suffered in any way. We just get more publicity from the articles that we get from that.
I think that's actually a very important point, is sort of what the benefit is to the business for doing the work sort of within the community. And I know, Alan, you've got some ideas about sort of the actual value of that.
That's right, Carol. Yeah, we've tried to analyse what good this does for us, because it's quite an expensive exercise. You know, so a lot of garden centre owners look at me and question, why are you spending all this money and all this time going out there and working in the community? But we've managed to cut our advertising budget by 1/3, and on a comparable like for like on stores, we can see a 5% increase in sales where we get positive, credible PR. And that PR is worth a huge amount. It's very difficult to put a value on it, but we get TV, we get national papers, and we get local newspapers, and lots of magazines, and really a great deal of press coming for us. So there is a benefit, and other garden centres should really look carefully at that. And you need to be careful how you measure it, because it can look as if you're just doing something for nothing, but you really aren't, trust me. I'll just stop talking now because I'll go on forever otherwise and hand you over to someone else.
If you could just hand over to Alan from Cleve Nurseries. Alan, you've got you do a huge amount in the community and are also working on a new project on the edible bus stop. I wonder if you could tell us a bit about that.
Yes, certainly. In contrast, we have just 10 full-time equivalent employees, so we really are quite a small company. but I hope that what we're doing illustrates that even small companies can be active in the community and particularly with social networking as well. The Edible Bus Stop is a campaign that began in London and grew out of guerrilla gardening and is on bus route 322 starting at Clapham, and it's largely, well, it's entirely made up of volunteers who adopt wasteland around a bus stop and get the community to grow food on it. It may be short term, it may be long term, but the idea is to reconnect the community through growing food. We know how well allotments, what an eclectic mix of gardeners there are in allotments from every strata of society, and it's exactly that we're trying to roll out by using wasteland around bus stops. Now, it needn't be bus stops, it could be any public place. But our involvement came when we were approached to grow the plants for the first one to go outside of London, and it was launched the weekend before this immediate weekend, so 8 days ago, at the National Gardening Show at the Bath and West Showground. And so we grew lots of vegetables to put in modular units that made up a show garden at this National Gardening Show. That garden in its entirety is now going to Bath to go at a bus stop in Bath, and we hope that if it's successful and the community there are very enthusiastic to take it on, that will encourage others to say, well, you know, why can't we have one on our bus stop? And people who travel that bus route think, oh, that's a good idea. Why don't we have one further up the route? The idea is to change the world one bus stop at a time. But it is volunteers, and we are the only people who actually take a salary in this, in the sense that we have a business that is able to support it. The organisation is made up of landscape architects and a band of very enthusiastic volunteers who just turn up and they saw the units to make the boxes, they shovel the sand in and lay the paving, they fill the boxes with soil and they plant them up and they raise the seeds there in situ or at home and bring them along. And what we find is, and you probably think, well, sure, it's going to get trashed. Somebody's going to be pushed into it, or they're going to steal the fruit or the vegetables. But in practice, this doesn't happen. The community so far has really taken it on board and guard it jealously. And even those who are not into gardening have said, well, I like that idea, I'll buy you some seed or I'll buy you some compost. So you don't actually have to physically be involved. So that's what we got involved in, and we'd like to see roll out throughout the country if possible. But what they seriously need is some financial support from our industry in particular to get it going and to rebuild those links with the community. The other, if I may, the other thing that we got involved with in the community was cast your minds back to those days in February and March when we had wonderful weather and everything was, everyone was talking about drought and hose pipes, and we decided to take the bull by the horns, and I approached our water company, Bristol Water, and said to them, because I write for the Western Daily Press, I have a 2-page gardening feature every week in there. I said to them, you need me to engage with gardeners, to get them on board, to re-educate them if this is going to be a long-term problem. And they jumped at the idea. They said, yeah, okay, we're going to do a wrap-around every free paper in the whole of the Bristol Water District. Will you write the gardening section for it? If you do, we'll put your logo on the front. We'll do it absolutely free. So that was thousands of newspapers that went out and cost me just half an hour writing. So, it's just a question of grabbing the opportunity when it's there. They did go out, and then of course it started to rain. But nevertheless, it was an opportunity, and it did show that Cleve Nursery was involved in the community and concerned about the community.
I think it's a very, very important point. I'd like to to pass on now, actually, to David and look at some of the things that Dobbies are doing, because I think in many ways it's actually more difficult with a sort of a multiple group to get involved in the local community, because you've got sort of a central head office somewhere. You're not quite so close to the local population, but it's something that Dobbies are exceptionally good at and are sort of working very hard at. So I don't know, David, if you could just give us some information as to what Dobbies are doing.
Yes, certainly. Well, it does have its own challenges when you're a slightly larger organisation, but thankfully we've got some great community champions in all of our stores who head up the various projects that we do. So the two main ones that we have are our Here We Grow campaign, which is our sort of campaign to support local charities. So each store is given a community champion for Here We Grow, and they've got their own budget to help local groups. It might be school groups, it might be sort of things from young offender groups to sort of local charities themselves, and they can help them create things like sensory gardens, and also help to get sort of grow your own campaigns off the ground as well. So really it's up to the person within the store to hold that budget and to get in contact with the groups and go out and help them. So if it was something like a school group, then the community champion would go out to the school and sort of talk through what they'd like to achieve and help them sort of get all the equipment and the stuff that need to grow it, and then also go out and give a little bit of help and advice to the team that are building the project. And then also we'll go back to the project at different stages as well, and just make sure that everything's still growing and that everyone's happy, and that it's something that's helping to evolve. The other thing that we do in store is our Little Seedlings Club, and that's for children aged between 4 and 10, and basically it's a monthly club for those children, and they sort of come along on the first Sunday of every month, and there's a different workshop each month. So it could be everything from following a sensory garden scented trail to building your own sort of grow your own trough, and we also do things like water your wellies, where they can create like an interesting planted container, and it sort of helps kids to just get to have an interest in gardening and to grow their own food and sort of learn about the food that they do grow. And an important thing as well is that the parents always stay with the children during the sessions, and this helps them to become interested in the mini projects as well, which they then take home and grow, and they've both got an interest in what's happening. And again, it's back to the pester power of the fact that the children and the parents are working together on projects, and they'll want to go back and buy more things and grow more things as well. So it helps with the repeat business to the store as well.
And you're also working at Dobbies a lot more on sort of creating your own communities with sort of Facebook and Twitter.
Yes, yeah, certainly. So for Little Seedlings and for Here We Grow, it's a really good thing to have sort of Facebook and Twitter as a way that centrally from head office we can engage with the groups that we have helped and get feedback, and they'll send in pictures to us, and we can sort of help see how the work that's been done out in the stores is sort of coming in and sort of feeding back to us as well. Last year I think we helped 600 groups across the UK, so it's on quite a large scale, and it's good to see some of that coming back and to get the good feedback from the communities. Also in terms of Facebook, we can use it just for things like creating our own campaigns around Here We Grow and growing your own food. And it's a good way of just sort of getting messages out there to our customers that might not be sort of hard sales messages. It's more around having an interest in plants and gardening and helping to pass that knowledge on as well.
I think that's sort of an area, the whole social media question and sort of creating communities is an area where garden centres are finding it quite difficult. I mean, I think possibly Hilliers are leading the way, and I know that's something that Peter Doyle has been very much working with them on. And I don't know if you could just tell us a little bit, Peter, about some of the things that you've been doing with Hilliers.
Yeah, sure. I met Andy McIndoe at HTA conference last autumn, and we started talking about finding new ways of getting customers into the garden centres. So we ran a pilot between March and May last year across 3 garden centres, and we trained up the shop floor plant area managers. We thought we'd focus on plants because we can start plant conversations on Twitter, and we thought we'd start on Twitter because it's an open social network. Facebook is a very connected social network with friends, so we thought we'll try to build a community around those garden centres in Bath, Chichester and Eastbourne. And we did some training. The staff were very nervous about using the technology to start with, but we managed to make them feel comfortable. We showed them some case studies of other retailers doing it. And then we set them off tweeting from the shop floor, talking about new plants coming in. And of course, they've got a lot of knowledge within that retail business around plants. And within a few days, we had some sales coming in, brand new customers. So we talked about rolling it out to the other garden centres. And now it's in every garden centre. Hilliers are now tweeting from every garden centre. We wrote a social media policy for the staff, and we plan conversations.
I think that's one of the sort of big concerns of people, of sort of the control aspect of things like Twitter. How do you ensure that the messages that get out are the right messages? Is that something you can control, or that you can work with the garden centres on?
That's a really good question. It's definitely something you can't control. So once you realise that and accept that, it's then about embracing it. What you can control and what you can influence is what you say on those social networks. And of course, purely from a retail point of view, there are many conversations, thousands of conversations you can start around plants and gardening, and also picture sharing as well. Pinterest is becoming very popular in America, and we'll see that becoming more popular over the UK the next 12 months. So sharing pictures and starting conversations around plants is really the skill of using local social media from a business point of view. And also training your staff, showing them best practice, and showing them other examples of how to do things, I think is good. What we noticed, particularly within Hilliers, is the staff were far more engaged, far more upbeat. After they got over the initial tweeting and they started making connections, they said it just feels like having a normal conversation with people. And of course, Hillier put Wi-Fi in their garden centres last year, so that made it very easy for them to enable to do something like this as well.
And is it sort of all of the plant staff that can tweet, or do they have a sort of a nominated person? How does it work?
They have 2 people within every garden centre that we've trained up, and we've also created what we call ambassadors. So during our pilot that we did across the 3 garden centres, one particular garden centre really took to it very well. Across all their garden centres, and she helped train the others, by the way, as well. So across all the garden centres, they've now got a reach of about 1 million people on Twitter. We talk about a reach, not a following, so it's not so much how many people follow you, it's more about the size of influence of people following you. So that's now, as we've heard here, that is a really good channel. It's not a free channel because your time is very valuable, so you have to manage your time very carefully. But it is a channel now that they've got to talk to people about their offers and their promotions, and also just engage in new product ideas and new store ideas with customers as well. It's a very two-way process.
And is that sort of followed through as well on the sort of Facebook page?
They're just going to go into Facebook and rolling that out now, and we're talking about Pinterest as well. Right,
okay. And coming back to Dobbies, you're doing a lot more with tweeting customers, and is that done from head office, or is that done from the local stores?
Yeah, it's something that we have been doing a lot more of in the last year, and just now it's done centrally, so it's from the central support office, really within the marketing team, that we've got people that we've selected in different plant areas, and maybe restaurant managers, people throughout the business, that if a customer comes to us on a social network and asks a question, then we've got that connection in place to get the expert advice to them, rather than sort of at the moment to pass it out to the whole business, because as you were saying, it's important to write social media guidelines as well, because it's not as though you're having a conversation just with one person. Everything that you put onto social media is broadcast to almost all your customers, so it's really important to have the right tone of voice and to make sure that what's being said is correct as well. So just now we're doing it centrally, and we're hoping that as we build relationships with people in the stores and we roll out our social media guidelines, which we've signed off on recently, that this will become something that more people throughout the business can get involved with.
Okay, and sort of looking at other retailers on the high street and how they're dealing with it, Peter, is there sort of anybody that's a particular shining light or example that we can look at as garden retailers?
Yeah, Majestic Wines, they've been tweeting from the shop floor now for about 3 years. They are a truly multi-channel business. They do operate locally. Their online sales get allocated to the local store, so everyone in the stores get involved. Waterstones as well have started tweeting locally. There aren't that many retailers, national retailers, doing it locally, but I definitely think that the future of social media is local engagement and building local communities. And doing events, like we've heard this morning here, these events are really important because that's the thing that people start talking about. So by enabling like a hashtag community to share those events, I think you can reach a wide audience.
And what about the sort of the time aspect of it? You said earlier that sort of time is very important. How do you manage the sort of 24/7 view when somebody tweets in or when somebody comments? How would we as a garden retailer be able to sort of respond to them quickly enough? Because it's a very instantaneous society, and I think that's something that really concerns a lot of garden centres. So we're not really geared up to do that particularly well. You've got a marketing department in the office, but they're busy. They can't be answering tweets or sending tweets at the same time. Is that something that you can sort of plan for and adapt to?
Yeah, it's a good question. I get asked all the time. I always say the same answer, really. You can plan your time on Twitter, and most importantly, tell your customers that's when you're going to be on Twitter. So if you want to tweet on a Monday morning about the plants coming in that week, then say we'll be on Twitter between 11 and 12 on a Monday, and that's when to talk to us. So you can actually share that with your customers, and then they get the best response as well.
Right, okay. Alan, is that something do you use at Cleve Nurseries? I know you do quite a lot. Do you use Facebook? Do you use Twitter?
We don't use, well, we do have a Twitter account. My wife has one, but she's inactive, I think is the best way to put it. We are quite active on Facebook. We've been at it for over 3 years now, and we've got 1,250 friends, currently slightly more than that. We post 3 to 4 times per week, usually an image, but sometimes just a comment. Or a statement, and we probably check 3 to 4 times per day, maybe more actually, and that's done primarily by me, so there's some control, but my staff can post as well and would comment. For us it's been slowly growing in terms of numbers, but I have to say that a huge percentage of those are abroad, so they're never going to do business with us. But it does build traffic. We're posting things with links to our website so that we can improve our Google ranking. We hope that that will work. What I didn't mention earlier is I've just, the last couple of months, started a blog, and so I'm using that also to drive traffic to our website, which we launched last February, and the last sort of 18 months of my time has largely been taken up by writing and creating that website. It's a big website. We've got over 200 pages on it, which is mostly factual, so that it's a point of reference for our customers. So the more we drive people to it, hopefully the more they think, well, this is a place that knows what they're talking about, and be more inclined to shop with us. We do pull people from a surprisingly long distance, but I'm not quite sure whether that's because of our presence on the web or because of perhaps the circulation of the newspaper that I write for.
Okay, and Fermoy, Sarah, are you doing anything on sort of Twitter or Facebook at the moment?
Not yet, no.
Is it something that you're looking at?
We're pretty technophobic, unfortunately. We're just about to appoint a new marketing person, so we do need to get it up and running. We've got a website, obviously, but we don't sell from it. But we do have other people do tweet and Facebooks for our festivals, so we do get people to do them for those. But no, we don't do anything, do we?
I think it's sort of interesting to see if Dobbies are investing in putting somebody into each centre, just how important that link is to sort of to work, and the amount of things that you do in the community. And I think most garden centres as a whole are where you are, that it's sort of one of those things you want to do, don't quite know how to get started, and sort of keen to do something, but not necessarily knowing exactly
we need a techno
where to start.
We need a 12-year-old in our to do it for us, really.
But I think, going back to Peter, I think that's something that you've found, isn't it, the amount of training that's required, but it's not impossible, and you've got to engage with people quite quickly.
That's true. I do a lot of work with the British Retail Consortium on training courses and the Henley Business School, and we definitely feel that you need to be doing things, you've got to be on there, but if you plan your conversations well around your products and your services, then it is an extension of your marketing department and your PR department. And I've been researching a few other retailers a couple of years ago. One major retailer actually cut their advertising budget by £1,000. As you were saying there, you can cut the paid for media cost if you get this media correct. And of course, things change very quickly. So you've got to be on there, you've got to be monitoring what other people are saying about you. And also you can monitor your competitors as well and see what they're doing as well. So it is a very effective tool to grow your business, I think.
Okay, I think it'd be useful now to sort of open it up to the audience a bit. Do we have any questions or queries for any of our panellists from the audience?
Well, it's Michelle Whitefoot from the Glee press office. I've got a question for you, Peter. Can you explain more about Pinterest and how a retailer can use it so that it actually has some retail value, perhaps, at the end of the day?
Yes. The best way of explaining Pinterest is actually to just go on to Pinterest.com and have a look and have a browse, and you'll see people's boards. Effectively, it's an image sharing social network, a bit like Instagram, which is a mobile image sharing. You can create boards, so a retailer can create new products. They can take some pictures of new products arriving, put them up on their boards, and then other people pin them. It's very similar psychology to Twitter, where you follow people, you follow their boards. You can repin things, like retweeting things. And the early stats coming from America are saying that it's actually outgrowing Facebook in popularity. It's a very visual media, whereas Twitter is very text-based. You can share pictures on Twitter, of course, but it's a link to a picture. Whereas Pinterest is overtly visual. So as soon as you log on through a laptop or a tablet, you'll see other people's pins very quickly. And I think it's a great way for retailers showing off their product range. Like with any social network, you can't shout at customers. You have to engage in a very humble voice. And that's the skill of a good sort of photographer, really, in doing that. And try not to make it too scripted as well. It's got to be a natural picture. Ideally, the best boards are where customers actually create their own pictures and pin them on your board as well. And then we have something what we call user-generated content. That's what we're looking for, is we want customers to be so excited and empowered that they can actually tell people about what's going on in your store, rather than you have to do all the work yourself.
Peter, does that have a sort of, is there a text that goes on there as well? So it's a picture plus some text? Yes, you
can put comments on there as well.
So you would be able to tell people that this is a new plant, or this is...
Yes, that's right. And ideally, you would use it, as I said, as an engagement tool with customers and say, what would you like to see in our garden centre? And get customers really involved in your business.
Hi, I'm Terry Jones from Joy of Plants. We produce a plant finder app for the iPhone. I'm wondering how much has Hilliers invested in actually giving shop floor staff phones and equipment to tweet with? Have Hilliers invested in giving their staff smartphones and other equipment to tweet with from the shop floor? How are they actually doing it?
Yes, when we did a pilot, that was one of the very first issues that came up, actually, because they weren't allowed to use their smartphone on the shop floor. And I said, well, how can we tweet from the shop floor? So that's one of the things they're looking at, is what technology do they need. We did an evaluation between the iPad and the BlackBerry Playbook. And of course, this was March, a long time ago in tablet world. We have now a Google tablet out there. We've got the Microsoft Surface coming out. So the tablet, I think, is a really good shop floor assistant tool. Smartphones are getting bigger screens and slightly more smaller. So I think retailers generally will probably start looking at all this technology, enabling Wi-Fi in their stores and saying, well, what's a reasonable thing to be carrying around with you on your shop floor? And how do we build this into the normal time of a shop floor assistant and their working day?
Probably just to add to that very quickly, if you think about events in store as well, for the Little Seedlings events, but also things like if at Christmas time we've got things like Santa's Grotto and Breakfast with Santa and different things that obviously people do have to sign up for. we're looking at tablets to use for that, so we could have like an online booking system where it's done centrally, that people can do it through the website, but also if you're in store, it's the same portal, so that anybody can sign up and the spaces fill up automatically, because at the moment we're doing it all by pencil and paper, and somebody phones, somebody else is on the internet, and it becomes very confusing. So I think that's a way that technology can help as well, but it would be great if all our plant managers could have iPads, but I'm not sure if we'll get signed off on anytime soon.
I've just seen your finance director over there, so I think...
Yeah, I made sure she'd left when I said that.
I think what it's shown today is just how important this area, both of sort of the social areas, the community, social networking, I think what it's shown is just how important that is. And I think the other thing is just how much help people need to get it set up. And it's not something to be frightened of. It's an ideal way of communication. It is the future, and it is a way of engaging with a new and different customer. So I think it's something that certainly from sort of an HTA perspective, we're going to have some workshops planned. So there are things that we can do to help, and I think it really is the way forward. So can I just thank all our panellists for coming along and sharing with you some of the work that they're doing, and thank you very much for attending. Thank you.